Today someone asked me on a community post I made, how do you draw gore? And I figured maybe it's time for me to take a break from the things I do to actually come through and do what y'all want, I guess. So instead of finishing animations that I probably should have finished a long time ago, I am going to teach you how to make all the gore you want for your edgy AUs, just like I do! Because who the hell would listen to a professional rather than a 16-year-old artist who has a very basic knowledge of anatomy and a lot of experience watching horror movies? Is this what you want from me? Alright then, I am not qualified whatsoever, but here we go. Blood is a simple enough place to start off, and it's pretty easy once you get the hang of it. I've seen a lot of people just sort of scribble blood down, like younger kids will do this. They'll scribble it down and just put it everywhere. It'll be either really dark or really bright, but there is a technique that I use, and I use a specific brush on IbispaintX, and you can use something similar to it. It's the Falcon pen brush, and this is what I use to make drips of blood. Blood behaves similarly to water, but it's a little bit thicker, a little bit more viscous. And so when I make streaks of it, I keep in mind that there's more of it near the source point, and then the streak thins out near the middle before thickening up at the bottom. And a good example of this is that one drip at the bottom of the character's chin here. Bloodstains are also really important, and you can see a good example of how I draw them on this piece that I showed before here. I like to use the real cloud brush because that's a very blotchy brush and it helps mimic blood that's been smeared or has since dried. I'll also use a watercolor brush, maybe a soft pastel brush. I love this brush for rendering, as you'd call it, too, but not so much gore. And I'll switch back and forth from these, I'll mix them together. It's really not that serious, just what I find to be very important is how you use the opacity in different shades of red. You can see at the character's eye here, I have a darker shade of red where the source point is, and then it slowly fades out the more it smears across the face. At this point I'm using the cloud brush. I tend to use all sorts of shades of red. Sometimes it'll go a little bit into orange, but I use near black and then very vibrant red, and you can mix these together, but the lighter it is, typically that's where it's been fading out. And if you're doing the blood and gore in another layer, then you can also try setting the layer to multiply, and that can make it darker and more coherent with the other colors, but I don't do this very often as it sort of messes with the colors that I've carefully chosen. This isn't always a bad thing though, and it doesn't need to be super realistic every time. If you want it to look more coherent with the other colors, sometimes you can lower the opacity of the layer, and here, because all the colors on this picture were softer, I decided to do that, so the blood doesn't look as correct with the colors, but it does look better in terms of the whole piece. The piece here was an art fight attack for North Fluff, and I'll put a link to their art fight in the description. Moving on from blood, here's some lacerations. Flesh can be kind of pulpy if it's shredded enough. And this is something else to keep in mind when you're drawing your gore. What weapon was used to create that injury, and how deep does it go? This piece is quite old, but it does show an example of this. The character in the background created those injuries using a branch or a piece of stone and cut across the injured character's back. Flesh there has some pulpy highlights to create that texture. This can be where the soft pastel brush comes in handy, or a watercolor brush, something a little bit smoother. Lighting is something to keep in mind as well. Near the middle of those injuries, the red is a little lighter, and near the edge, it's much darker. And you can also, as you can see I'm doing right now, create outlines where those lighter areas are, just so you can define that pulp. This you can just get as messy as you want with it here, just as long as you create some rounder, lumpy areas, just to show that the flesh has been shredded. Muscle is very interesting. It's pretty stringy, and it has white elements, especially near the center where two muscles join together. Here I'll use all sorts of shades of red and orange. And a brush I like to use here is this one, the Procreate Oil Brush by 𝔸𝕓𝕠𝕠. A piece where I use this technique is this one, an Art Fight Attack for Sketchbook Author, and this one, an older piece I did for ℸ𝕠𝕦. Notice here how all the organs are displayed neatly, and there's little to no damage. That's because the character's body was opened up with a lot of precision, and that's something, like as aforementioned, to take into account is how were these injuries acquired? In this case, it was done very neatly by a unlicensed professional. Something I see that is ignored quite a bit is skin or tissue. Here, it's being pulled back by hooks so you can see where it bends and is peeled backward. And there's also little veins that go throughout it, so, you know, that is in skin. I like to use an airbrush to fade out the edges of these veins. Organs, like intestines, seem to be pretty popular to draw in Gore, and as always, a reference photo can work very well, but I don't tend to use reference photos. So a tip with drawing intestines is they tend to be a little bit more orange in hue, with the large intestine being more orange. And you know, this is an original species that this is being drawn on, so that might not be very anatomically correct, but I don't care. You can think of worms when shading the intestines. They're sort of segmented, and they also fold on top of each other. They also have a sheen to them, so once again the soft pastel brush can go in handy here, and that's what I use to create this shine. Now working on the large intestine, you have a line in the very middle, which sort of makes it look like there are two small intestines connected, which creates the large intestine. And by connected, I mean stacked on top of each other. If this means anything. Something I always keep in mind when drawing gore is just where are organs in the body? Where are muscle groups in the body? What places bleed the most when injured? And you don't have to get that complicated, it's really not serious, it's messy gore, who cares? But thinking of anatomy is never a bad thing. You're drawing the innards of a character, might as well make it realistic, right? I said it once, I'll say it again, I am no professional, I am still learning myself, but you ask, and I will try my best to deliver at least once in my art career, I guess. I hope this helped, and once again, if you're still confused, if you just want a little bit more anatomical correctness, use reference photos, that's never a bad thing. If you like this video, I don't know, good job. This isn't the content I usually make furry animation memes that only sometimes have gore, so go check that out, I guess. Bye-bye! Also, if any of you go in the comments saying, "That's not how you do it, this is a bad tutorial," that really hurts my feelings.
Gotta make a move to a town that's right for me. Town to keep me moving, keep me grooving with some energy.